I've played almost every big-budget horror game money can buy, and not one of them scared me the way these old PS1 games did. They pulled that off on a console weaker than the phone sitting in your pocket right now, and that doesn't make any sense until you sit down and play one of these for yourself in the dark. Hi folks, I'm Thomas, and let's get into it.
Daddy? Help.
What makes Silent Hill so unsettling, even decades after its release? The original 1999 PlayStation game from Team Silent doesn't just follow the rules set by Capcom's horror classics, it quietly rewrites them. Instead of a super cop or a soldier, we step into the shoes of Harry Mason, an ordinary father searching for his daughter Cheryl in a town that seems determined to twist itself into ever stranger shapes.
My daughter. I've got to find her.
The fog and darkness, born partly from hardware necessity, become the game's greatest assets. Think about the radio static, the narrow cone of your flashlight, the maps that are almost useless without light, and the way enemies announce themselves with sound before you ever see them. Combat feels awkward because Harry moves like someone who has never held a weapon before. But isn't that the point? In 1999, as the world buzzed about the Dreamcast and the coming PlayStation 2, Silent Hill proved that the old gray box still had the power to haunt us. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis takes a different approach, confronting you with danger that is relentless and immediate. Released in 1999, just a year after Resident Evil 2, this time we inhabit the role of Jill Valentine,
Why isn't someone doing something about this?
navigating a raccoon city in the throes of collapse. And Capcom knew the PS1 well enough by then to make every pre-rendered street feel packed with broken cars, fire, locked gates, and ammo you probably wish you saved. Nemesis is the real pressure here. He can follow you between areas, use a rocket launcher, and force those live selection choices where running is usually the smart play. It is more action-oriented than the first two games, and yeah, being shorter with one main character does keep it from feeling as full as Resident Evil 2. But the dodge, quick turn, and that first stars growl still make it easy to see why this one sold the way it did.
Maybe this has been a wild night of partying.
It's hard to talk about Dino Crisis without getting a touch depressed, because Capcom had something sharp here and then let the series drift away. It swaps zombies for a secret island facility where Regina and her team are looking for Dr. Kirk.
Dr. Kirk, we've come to help.
The cool part is that it isn't just Resident Evil with dinosaurs. It uses real-time 3D environments on PS1, so the camera and rooms feel different, and the dinosaurs can keep pressure on you in a way that slower zombies never could. Item management is still there, ammo is still tight, and the Rick or Gale choices give the run a little more shape. It can feel a touch repetitive, but 2.4 million copies and a quick sequel say enough. Dino Crisis doesn't mess around, and neither should Capcom.
They call me Eden.
Number 12 on the list is Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare. It is a game that brings an older horror name back to the system after Resident Evil had made this kind of thing feel like Capcom's house. It arrived in 2001 and puts Edward Carnby and Aline Cedric on Shadow Island after Carnby's partner, Charles Fisk, turns up dead.
Who did this to you?
The PS1 version was arriving late, with the PS2 already out there and Dreamcast still fresh in people's heads. But the flashlight system gives it a neat little hardware trick. The beam reveals items, cuts through dark rooms, and makes the pre-rendered backgrounds feel more alive than they probably should on the old machine. Edward's route leans more on fighting, Aline's leans more on puzzles, and that split gives the game a bit more shape. Number 11 is Galerians, a PlayStation horror game that isn't what you'd expect from survival horror on the OG PlayStation. Released in Japan in 1999 and North America in 2000, it was developed by Polygon Magic and follows Rian, a boy who wakes up in a hospital with no memory and psychic powers he absolutely did not ask for.
Who am I?
This is the kind of late PS1 horror game that feels like it belonged on the strange side of the rental shelf. The one you picked up because the cover looked too weird to ignore. There are no shotguns doing the heavy lifting here. Rion uses drugs to trigger powers like Nalcon, Red, and D-Felon, but push him too far and he short-circuits into a dangerous psychic overload.
We're right. Okay.
Number 10 is Countdown Vampires. And it's about as blunt as a horror game gets. A casino overrun by vampires, black water raining from the sprinklers, and one very unlucky cop caught in the middle of all of it. Published by Bandai, and it landed in Japan in 1999, before making its way to North America in 2000. Keith J. Snyder, a security guard at the Desert Moon Casino when a fire breaks out and the sprinkler water starts doing something it really shouldn't.
The name is Snyder.
Turning people into these feral, vampire-like things. The dart gun and whitewater mechanic is genuinely the most interesting thing here. Instead of just shooting everything in the face, you can sedate enemies and try to bring them back to human. Which is clunky in practice, but at least it's trying something. The casino backdrop does a lot of the heavy lifting. Dance floors, back rooms, and that specific late-night B-movie atmosphere that's hard to manufacture and even harder to fake. Echo Night isn't what you'd expect from a horror game on the OG PlayStation. From Software had already built Kingsfield, and this feels like the studio taking everything they knew about first-person 3D and pointing it at something quieter. Ghosts instead of dungeons. It's a 1998 release, and we play as Richard Osmond, trying to piece together what happened to the vanished ship Orpheus and the strange power tied to two stones. There is no real combat here. When a ghost appears, you turn on the lights, figure out what's keeping that spirit trapped, and move on. That slow pace can be frustrating at first, but it builds a thick atmosphere most horror games never get to. Because most horror games are too busy making you shout something. This is the kind of PS1 game where quiet footsteps and a room that suddenly feels wrong do most of the work.
Alan Hale.
Number 8 on the list, Clock Tower. Keeps the supernatural dread, but gives it one of the most memorable little freaks on the PlayStation. Released in Japan in 1996 and North America in 1997, Human Entertainment's Clock Tower is actually the second game in the series, with the first Super Famicom game staying in Japan. We follow characters like Jennifer Simpson and Helen Maxwell as Scissorman returns, and the game changes routes and endings depending on what you do. The point-and-click setup is the real hook. You move a cursor around the screen with a controller, or even a PlayStation mouse if you had one of those sitting around, and that makes every chase feel awkward in the best way.
They're all dead.
When panic mode hits, you are not aiming a gun. You are looking for a hiding spot, a usable object, or anything that gets those scissors away from you. It can feel a touch slow, but the helplessness works.
Little shit. What good is it gonna do to burn that?
Number 7. Parasite Eve II brings Aya Brea back into horror, but this time the game leans more into classic survival horror than the original. It was released in Japan in 1999, and in North America and Europe in 2000. This time, Aya works with MIST, an FBI unit that handles neo-mitochondrial creatures. The opening at Acropolis Tower immediately gives off that late-era Square vibe. Sharp CG, strange monsters, and a serious mood that makes the old Jewel Case era feel special. Combat is now real-time, with guns, ammo, armor, and parasite energy abilities all part of the item management. The gameplay feels smoother in some ways, but it loses a bit of what made the first Parasite Eve stand out. The Dryfield section, set in a lonely desert motel with plenty of body horror, is still one of the highlights. Parasite Eve II is a solid sequel, even if it doesn't quite have the same impact as the first.
There, that's it. The Lamb Building.
Number 6. Fear Effect is what happens when late PlayStation horror gets obsessed with cinema, anime, and every disc in the case. Developed by Kronos Digital Entertainment and published by Eidos in 2000, it follows Hana, Deke, and Glass through a future Hong Kong job that keeps getting worse.
Wait, Hana! Don't leave me!
This was a 4-disc PS1 game, and that alone gives it a specific kind of rental-era weight, like you knew the weekend was gone once that second jewel case came out. The technical trick is the looping full-motion video backgrounds. Instead of static rooms, you get steam, lights, and movement behind cel-shaded characters, which made the whole thing feel expensive for the time. The fear meter is also a nice touch, with danger and health tied to that rising panic. It's tough, sometimes kind of brutal, and the action can be a little awkward, but Fear Effect is still one of the stranger late PS1 horror games that actually good.
Don't deserve such a warm welcome.
Vampire Hunter D comes from a more gothic side of horror, the kind tied to gothic anime, old VHS covers, and character art that looked cooler than most licensed games around it. It follows D as he enters Castle Chaith to find Charlotte Elborn after the vampire Meyerlink takes her away.
My name is D.
The setup is simple, but the mood carries a lot of it. Ancient halls, strange creatures, locked rooms, and that lonely vampire hunter tone from Bloodlust. You move through castle areas, pick up keys, solve small puzzles, and fight with D's sword instead of relying on guns. The left-hand system gives it a stranger hook, letting you heal, use magic, or absorb weakened enemies once they are close to death. It can feel stiff, and the pacing is not exactly friendly, but Vampire Hunter D still has that odd licensed game charm.
Difficult? Open sesame!
Shadow Man is a much bigger, nastier thing. Released in 1999 by Acclaim Studios' T-Side and Acclaim Entertainment, it is based on the Valiant comic and follows Mike Leroy, a man tied to the Mask of Shadows and the world of Deadside.
Then, if I'm to join you...
This one is not built like a normal survival horror game. It is closer to a dark 3D action-adventure where you move between live side and dead side, collect souls, gain abilities, and open routes that were sealed off before. That structure gives it a strange pull, like a horror game that accidentally walked into 3D Metroidvania territory. The technical story is also worth saying plainly. The PlayStation version was not the best way to play it, with slow frame rates hurting a game this big and complex. But the voodoo weapons, serial killer plot, jaunty and rotten deadside imagery are still memorable.
Jenny's out there somewhere, alive.
Evil Dead: Hail to the King is one of those licensed PlayStation horror games that feels completely tied to its era. It released for PlayStation in 2000 and works as a sequel to Army of Darkness, with Ash dragged back toward the Necronomicon and the old cabin.
Now if you'll excuse me, duty calls.
This is Resident Evil-shaped horror with pre-rendered backgrounds, semi-fixed cameras, limited ammo, and fuel for the chainsaw. The neat part is Ash fighting with both hands, boomstick in one, chainsaw or axe in the other, plus Bruce Campbell dropping one-liners like the triangle button was built for it. The 2-disc case and 2 memory card blocks give it that late PS1 licensed game feel, like something you rented because the cover promised more Evil Dead than the movies were giving you at the time. It is repetitive and kind of brutal, but fans of the series still have a reason to look.
Listen to me. Find the pages and bring them here, to me.
Not exactly the red carpet treat.
Dino Crisis 2 takes the first game's survival horror formula and pushes it much closer to action. Released in 2000 by Capcom, it brings Regina back alongside Dylan Morton after a time-distorting event drops a research base and its people into a dinosaur-packed mess. The big change is simple. This is not really about barely surviving anymore. It is about killing dinosaurs in quick chains, keeping the combo going, and earning extinction points to buy ammo, weapons, health, and upgrades at computer stations. Some of the dread is gone, and that does matter, but the pace is straight up fun. Dino Crisis 2 is a difficult, ridiculous sequel, and Capcom leaving this series behind is still very disappointing.
Wow, what a mansion!
And at number 1, It had to be Resident Evil. This is the first game in that classic series. We play as Chris Redfield or Jill Valentine, STARS members trapped inside the Spencer Mansion, while zombies, dogs, hunters, locked doors, and bad inventory decisions pile up around them. The hardware angle here actually matters. Resident Evil started from the idea of a real-time 3D horror game, but the PlayStation could not handle that kind of detail. So Capcom used 3D characters over pre-rendered backgrounds with fixed camera angles. That compromise gave the mansion blind corners, sharp room cuts, and door-loading screens that somehow became part of the tension. Back in the day, even choosing between ink ribbons, herbs, and one more key could feel like a small disaster. The voice acting is rough.
Now it's Wesker's time to disappear.
The controls are harder than people remember, but there is no shame in aging a little weird when your haunted mansion helped teach a whole console generation how survival horror works.